This is basically the shift, weight shift of going into any basic move like the box step. So this is all about being able to make a break whenever you're executing your footwork, going to the left, and that's a basic box step. So just remember this: if the weight shift is not balanced on either side, you won't be able to make the move. So bouncing to the left, the weight has to be balanced on both sides. And then you can execute any move, your pivot, your box step. And that's the premise of executing the box step. That's the technique that we utilize to make sure your hands is up. Is constantly touch the temples. And that takes a while. And the next thing that we're going to get into is the weave and pivots. This is where everyone is having a difficult time transitioning. So it's all about taking your head in one direction, and what people are doing is doubling the move, going to one side and ending up on the opposite side. But you have to go to the direction whenever you do a weave and come back up on that side to drop and roll, you go under like that and you slide. So you have to follow the direction that your head goes. And just like that, and slip to the right, and you come out on that side. When you weave down here, your objective is to come up on the side that the head goes, and do not elude that principle. Right there, you're under the at the ankle, so you're out of the way of harm, and you're directly under the armpit of your opponent, and that's where you want to be. And this video, I'll send it to everyone so you can actually see it and hear it.
Great.
Keeping it simple, drop and roll, come out on the other side. See, that was a wrong demonstration right there. And that's what I was seeing a lot of people not sure what direction to go. And then they're just kind of doing this double move, which is wasting too much time instead of just being a nice, cold, clean move. And, but just with reps will come comfort. This is a basic pivot. Shift the weight to the ball of the foot so you can just make the move silky smooth and fluid. Beautiful. The weight is on the heel, and bam, you can make the move very clinical, execute, boom, nice and clean, tight movement, not a lot of confusion, not no discomfort at all. Good.
Yeah, excellent.
Yes. So that's a big that's a big thing that we're dealing with, having the clarity to make these moves and have an understanding, what am I doing and what is the principle, and having that is uber important. So it's nothing worse than being confused when you're boxing, because if you're boxing, you're going to get confused, and it's not till you become an old geezer like myself that the flaws stop, but in the muscle memory set in, and it takes so long. So really clear, that video will be accompanied by each one of the tactics and the skill sets that we have, from the box steps to the pivots to the drop and rolls to the Ray Robinsons to the bulldogs, on and on and on and on. The peekaboo hop side step pivots, all of those will have a nice little bundle. Now, when you're practicing, you'll get to hear the instructions. And that's where that's where concept comes in. When you've been shown and spoken to about concept, when you're taking that step by step approach, even when you're doing it in your fitness realm, you're working with your people and you're doing it and you're exercising, nothing gets you over the concept of exercising better besides keeping them conscious of craft, and it makes them forget about being exhausted. But keeping the thing that's most important in mind is the technique, and that keeps you sharp. That's why boxers are sharp. Any trainer that boxes, teaches boxing, and uses boxing is sharper. It just is. You're just going to be sharper than the guy who teaches burpees, because you come from a place and there is a destination in which you're going outside of just conditioning the body. So when you have that addition, I told the guys that were under our tutelage or just surrounded me in the days of being inside of big box gyms teaching, I told them the secret, you have to tie it to something. So there's much more to do than just lift and push and get exhausted and hate coming. Have them leave with a takeaway and looking forward to the next lesson and exercise. So, with that being said, that's kind of what plays into this, having more critiquing to do and keeping them sharp. And that really makes you a much greater trainer and teacher. I didn't see Twan's question. Let me see. Uh, Hold on one second. Excuse me. I'm on the heel. Yes. When you do a pivot, you can, and let me explain. This is when you're walking down the opponent. When you're forward walking, if you're working backwards, your objective is to be on the back, of fighting off the back foot. So fighting off the back foot comes with an entirely different rule base. So that's why we have it in school format. So there won't be one size fits all. There's no one skill that stays the same. Not the jab, not the cross, not the uppercut, not the head movement. We have variations of every type of slip that's possible to human beings. And with that being said, with every different body type, there's going to be a different requirement for movement. Like, just say Haley might have a long torso. So her slip method has to be to protect her lower rib cage in boxing. So she'd have to learn how to slunch more over like Triple G. And then you might have someone with a shorter torso who does not have to do that much crouching, and they can have the winky right effect. They can be defended and they can work the jab differently, and their defensive prowess is different because they are more designed anatomically to be defensive. And that's why guys like Winky Wright was so great at defense, because his arms went to his hip bone. I mean, he could protect his whole body, and it was hard to even get a lick in on that guy. So, great question, because you do need to ask to find out. And we do segments like It's Time to Box for that reason, particularly, and these calls like this to give clarity and that there's precision with and confidence in what you're doing. So that's just a great pearl to have when you're instructing. So my objective is to make sure that you're the greatest teachers and instructors that the planet has to offer, and I make sure that you're equipped with the right material to make that happen. Because I mean, just wanting it is one thing, doing something about it is another. So
Yeah.
questions are great. Go ahead.
What's helping me whenever we do a clinic like this is, of course, to take notes, but also afterwards to try to write about what the clinic was about, or even make a video about it. That helps me tremendously get it under my skin
Yes.
every time.
Mr. Zell, Ted,
Yeah.
this guy, this is the best student on the planet. I just want to introduce you to him. This is Coach Fleming Larson. He's out there in over there across the pond in Denmark, and his just attention to detail is insane. I'm so jealous of this dude. He just don't know it yet. I mean, his awareness and consciousness with material and absorbing and finding the method in which he learns best. So what he does is he documents, does video, and kind of like regurgitates what he just heard. And that's how you get muscle memory. And when you can write it, frontal cortex, and when you can take it and store it in that brain, hippocampus, and then you can execute it, muscle memory. And
have you guys ever heard of rock steady boxing?
Yeah, rock steady with the Parkinson's. Yeah.
That's what I do. That's what I do to pass on Uncle's legacy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you're hitting a lot of the points that we go with.
Yeah.
Square steps, getting everything in.
Yeah.
Making sure they do it right.
Yeah.
Because if they don't do it right, they get sloppy and it's not as effective.
Yeah.
We want to build those muscle connections and those brain connections.
Yeah.
Neuroplasticity is what it's all about.
Yes. That's good.
And it works for them. For them, it works for any boxer.
Yeah. I mean, and if you're working with people with Parkinson's, that is all data. They're collecting that data and finding out, how those memories talk, how those little passageways connect to one another. And when we talk about boxing, we had to create a platform where you could discuss it in its entirety. So you think about how many shows I'm doing. You think about this, you think about the fight show, you think about just a regular daily streams. All of them, I'm talking about something different. Then you got It's Time to Box. And they're just, the conversation is ginormous. So you can't take a short. If I'm going to do it, I gotta double down on it, so that those who are watching, I've been in all of you guys' position, just because I did have the privilege to be connected to boxing royalty and carry down torches. It still was the same amount of toughness, because you got nonstop questions.
Yeah.
Like you got a question about, am I right? Am I right?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't the only one, because sometimes I say I'm a little stupid at things, but I had questions. I mean, no matter how much was shown, how much amazing technique was shown, I still had questions about the most basic of thing. I just felt stupid. And when you're sitting beside kings and hearing them talk, when you thought you knew something about boxing, and then you realize I know nothing about boxing except how to spell it in 2 languages. That's the reality check. So that's what I came up under. And immediately in the fire, held to the feet, held to it. So you couldn't escape it. So you had to accept what was what, and not allow yourself to get caught up with those monkeys screaming in your head. And that's kind of how I transitioned into taking it in and learning things and understanding each layer. That's why we break everything into tiers, so that there's a walkthrough, there's an average pace, then you step it up, and then you bring the smoke. And so it's very important. Don't rush to the end. Master the science of a couple of things. You can't be the master of everything. There'll be areas that you do not master, but you will not screw it up. That's the biggest thing.
You bet.
Yeah, because when you get exhausted in boxing, it can be exhilarating because you're in that place.
Yes.
That Graziano Zale place, that place where only few men have gone and come back from. That's a good feeling in a way. If you have tapped into that right motor in that mind, it's a good place. So sometimes you push your people to a place that will bring out all of those things that they were frightened of, and they face them. And then that's kind of what comes of it. And I like sometimes teetering around that dance. It just feels good to challenge yourself. So Fleming, that was great. Thanks for sharing that, because it does matter that you take this stuff and with the guys who were coming in. Mr. McDonald came in and did a great video circuit. Then the next week he was sick. You feeling better, brother?
Yeah, big improvement. Thank you. Yes,
Good.
it's upwards from here on. So, yeah,
Good.
back to my old self.
Okay, I hope that's a good thing.
Trouble for everyone else.
Oh yeah, well, it's just good to have you back into. Okay, he did such a great video, man, and you got it on YouTube, don't you? Didn't you have it on YouTube?
Yeah, I put a few things.
Yeah,
on
Haley,
YouTube,
Haley
yeah.
and Ted. I got to send you guys that. He's just very clever guy and wise. I like clever. You'll find me use that word. Smart is cool. Clever,
I just hope someone gets something from it. You know, even if it's
they
if
will.
it's not informative, at least it's entertaining and it's not a
Well-
complete waste of their time.
Well, I tell you what, you're talking to someone who wakes up every single day, and the numbers matter. People will be impacted and moved by it. If I am speaking about it, that means I understand, because I listen to the audience and I know what they like. I know what they would like to have. And so when I looked, I said, this is material. This is good material. Like, this is good material. So I'm looking forward to
I
introducing it to.
certainly couldn't have done it without the material that you're providing. So it's all standing on the shoulders at the moment. So thank you.
Yeah, well, good luck, man. I'm definitely here. If you need anything, we got you covered, man. And Haley, you got any questions?
I just had a thought about balance.
Mhm.
When you're talking about the most basic things can sometimes be a challenge.
Yeah.
I think balance is something we're all born with, but to cultivate it and use it to your advantage, and
Yeah.
that's what Dad is doing with Rock Steady Boxing.
Yeah.
But it's also what you just did in that video. You put your weight
Wait.
on your left heel
Yeah.
so you could lift up your right leg to
Yes.
pivot. So that's I think just a good example of something so basic that you have to hone and make it into a skill is balance. Because we've seen even the greatest
Oh,
lose their
gosh.
balance.
Yeah. That's the key. And you got to find different techniques. Like, I realized that you have there is a technique that has to be acquired for every scenario, which is what I learned. There was no one size fits all. I remember getting my ABC book back in the day when I was starting, and they give you like these diagrams of some of the moves. So I'm like, cool. And here I am with the number 3 amateur fighter in the world, boxing guys. I'm like, this don't look like it works right here, like these scenarios. So I realized very fast, situations and style make cases. So therefore my journey really began to challenge what had been done. And I'm not challenging USA boxing by any means. You can only do so much you can do when you have so much to truly develop people. So it was my job, then I realized then, to do something about it. I'm a kind of do something about it guy. You might start to pick up on that after a while, that if you can talk about things, but it's better to do something about it. And if you got breath in your body, then do something about it. And that's kind of what we did, and created a program that has, hopefully no holes in it, and the amount of content that will keep you full for your entire lives and those who you touch. So yes, Haley, that balance is absolutely the king. And I wrote a little piece for you all about just the system of boxing. It's a sentence that maybe you can all take away and stuff. I've been always challenged to shorten things up so that it makes sense, but I define boxing as this: timing and distance. And those are the key takeaways from everything. Like, you can elaborate on 1,000 other words or sentences, but timing and distance is key. If you look at Andre Ward, you look at Floyd, you look at Ali, you look at people who are great, Willie Pep, who just, they had that. And all of them had that more than anything else. They weren't big punchers. You know what I'm saying? They weren't dominating size, inferior. You know, they all had consciousness of timing and distance. That was the key. Bernard Hopkins, it's just, and even Joe Calzaghe, just very freaky little tendencies that they were able to fluctuate. They can change the distance that they needed to, just enough to keep you off balance. All those guys, the connect percentage of their fighters, the guys that they were against, were super low. And that's about understanding the distance and stuff. So timing and distance, a definition that you can use. And when you nail those two things, everything else falls into place. And of course, to have proper distance, you're going to need balance. That's just without saying. So I thought that was a good pearl to have. And I always remember, like I said yesterday, anybody can find a great athlete. But like when we watched on Sunday, there was Patrick Mahomes, a better athlete. There was Lamar Jackson, better athletes. Aaron Rodgers, better athlete than Brady. But in sports, the best student wins. And Brady is the best student. Nobody studies harder. They think they do until you watch his documentary and you realize this dude's on an entirely different stratosphere. And that's how you have to be. So that's why I appreciate your work, Fleming, that you do, and you study and you regurgitate the information back out. And that's a powerful thing. So that's kind of it, man. That's all I got. Any one of you guys have a question about one of those topics or any place that you are? William, go ahead.
Yeah, just something came to my mind there when you're talking about timing and distance, and having looked at some of the old fights again.
Yeah.
There was a moment, and it stuck out to me actually. It was Walcott Marciano.
Woo!
I don't know if this, right, because my history's not great, but I think
round 13.
I think it was the first time he got put down, but it's the moment Walcott comes out from the corner,
Yeah.
and he, with timing and distance, he took, like, I think it was exactly on the fourth step.
Yeah.
Through a hook, and that was the moment he put him down. And for that, I watched that a couple of times because I thought there's something going on there with.
Yeah. That's that Jersey strut when he walks across that ring. And I teach the guys how to do that in the thing, Mr. Zell.
Jersey strut.
Yeah. And we do that. We do the grunt walk, which was made famous by, the guys like Dwight Muhammad, Cowie, James Toney, Jersey Joe as well. Just a mannerism in which you approach your opponent and stuff, and just walk you down with timing and just light you up with that one punch that's going to rock you so out of this world. So I feel like the guys need to know, because if you get into a position in your fighter, you have to have repetitions of things that he will feel. So you have to mimic that moment when he will feel a certain thing. Sometimes when I would talk to the guys in the gym, I would just allow that thing to pop off of out of my shoulder blades, man. And I just get that hunchback and curly face, and then let them feel that other thing that's going to happen to them in the ring. And those guys will eat it up, and they will be ready to rumble and stuff. So, it takes you back to the legendary fights where Archie Moore and Yvonne Durrell, and of course, you guys is etched in history with the Zell Graziano. That fight that series is etched in boxing soil, in blood. So the fights that guys leave it in the ring, and people don't quite understand what that means, so that storybook, those lines that go in those type stories are infamy. They go down in history. And so you got to find the best way to mimic that, so when they know how to identify it. So that was a good
when you look back at the greats like Marciano and Jersey Joe Wilcott, they didn't have a name for it. They didn't have a strategy. They weren't like taught that. It was just natural.
Yeah.
So that now we can look back and be like, okay, that's what he did and that's why it worked. And that's how the science has sort of continued to be developed in this sport.
That's exactly what it is. That's what the School of Boxing is, creating the entire vocabulary for what those guys were doing and titling it with their names so people will understand and tie it to someone, because there's nothing that will make you want to box more than watching the greatest do it. And so the way long before I had an idea of who you guys were, my library still exists in there. You can pop up one of those tapes, and I got, I think one of the first things I popped up, Stacy can co-sign, was Archie Moore, one was of Tony Zell, one was of Dempsey, and Max Baer. Man, I got stuff that just, we went to Baltimore one night and sparred when we were helping Hasim Rockman spar for Fight Klitschko in 2005. I saw the date when I pulled it up and put it a part of one of the videos that we did recently. And we watched from like 9 p.m. after sparring. We watched boxing from 1897, the year of 1897, the first reel was done, 38 reels a second, till 4:48 a.m. So they watched boxing for almost 8 straight hours. They boxed for almost 5 straight hours, and then they watched it. And we think we got up to the Riddick Bowe Holyfield. We watched boxing from 1897 to Riddick Bowe Holyfield, like the next night too, because the boxing history, and some of it was in documentaries, some of it was in highlights and flashback, and talk through and walk through. And I, kind of expelled. And we spent the night and slept inside of the ring that De La Hoya and Sugar Ray Leonard fought in and trained in Baltimore. So it was special. Blood, everything was in the ring. That is the real fight game.
You bet.
Let's have another question.
Yeah.
How do I know if I should be a natural southpaw or if I'm a natural orthodox in terms of stats?
Well, what's your power hand?
I feel both are like about the same, so that's why I'm a little confused on.
Well, once you start sending in your tape, I can tell you which looks right and which doesn't, which looks awkward, and which one sacrifices technique most when the other hand is in front. If you are fighting southpaw and you might have a good jab, but you sacrifice defending your other side with the left hand because you're so happy with that left hand, then you need to fight conventional. And if the same thing happens, because sometimes you sacrifice something that you really need, and you need defense. And those are ways that you can tell if your feet, when you're boxing and you're not a natural something, your toe lifts up and down. And when you're boxing, your feet have to be positioned how you set them to be positioned. When they start doing what he called the Charlie dance in the stanky leg, your feet tell everything. So you can tell if a guy's a natural southpaw or not. And these are things that you learn from those ghosts, those professors, those guys who were born in the 30s and 40s. That's who taught me that stuff, how to look at a guy. And if he's not a real southpaw, this is what his feet will do. And, with that being said, that's the only way I knew that De La Hoya wasn't a true conventional fighter. And man, it's like, there's a sign that you can tell, but the longer you're around this game, the more you'll know, the more you'll learn. And that's
question for you, Coach.
Go ahead.
This is Calvin.
I can see your name, bro.
Okay. Well, I'll just make it short, man, because I know my face not up there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So the thing about the southpaw, would you say that if you know, I guess there's probably some right-handed southpaws out there, probably somewhere. If their power hand is in the front, like they do a lot of lead hooks, a lot of jabs. They got a stiffer jab, but it's not as much power. Is that a bad thing if you're a right-handed southpaw?
No, Miguel Cotto.
Well, yeah, I was going to say. I was just wondering about that.
Miguel Cotto, De La Hoya. I mean,
yeah,
man, your opponent can't tell if you don't have as much pop on your hand when you box and you got the technique behind you and you really know how to hit somebody. Like, when do you go to the gym really? When you really been working, I mean, consistently. I'm talking a couple of years, and be like, man, this left hand really hits harder than this right. And then it really doesn't, because your sparring partner's like, man, you cracked me with the right. You're like, I thought I hit harder with the left. That's up to the opponent to tell you. You know what I'm saying? How it feels coming from you is different than what is really happening. So just always remember that. And that Hixo technology gives you an but sometimes, man, it ain't the force, it's the where you hit people and stuff. So you hit the mid in the sweet spot. It's never with the hardest punch, just sounds the loudest, you know? Yeah, you just everybody loves to hit that sweet spot on the mitt. So that Mid Master series, and these things were no joke, man, to get done. These series that I've done, and if I go away, to return home, I know what I left in the ring. I left it all in the ring. That series breaks everything down, stages from you becoming a boxer, period, to learning your techniques and just the craft of learning how to use your quick twitch muscle. And then the next one teaching you how to do reflex and reaction and counter punch in your mid training, which tests your motor skills on an entirely different level, because it's just like being in the ring with Roger Mayweather. He making you do things that your brain is afraid to challenge itself. And then when you do it, and any of you have done Midmaster 2, you know how serious it is. And you working with guys and they're like, wow. And then they realize I can do this. And then they come to the gym just to do that. And then you have to teach them how to punch. And Ted knows, because his uncle was one of the greatest combination punches in boxing history, bar none. Zell was.
He really worked. He really worked at that right to the body, left hook.
Yeah. And see,
he spent so many years.
Yeah.
In the beginning of his career, getting beat.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't deliver it right.
He like me with that.
Finally got it.
Yeah. That's it. You don't, like I said, I'll go bowling. I used to, every 2 years I go bowling, and I'll suck for the first 20 minutes. But by that 30th minute, I'm just rolling. I can't miss. And I said, I'd rather get it wrong trying to get it right instead of just getting lucky every once in a while. Because he was a stickler for technique, the master this science. Because if I get this, I'm going down in infamy. I'm going to be a legend. And he did. And that's what happens. You become a master. He did other things really well, but that was his go-to. That was like, man, if I get you on the end of this combination, you're gone.
You're done.
You're gone.
Yeah, you can see that the best in the third Graziano fight, where Tony Zale does the right to the body and the left hook to
the
and it's so effective. But Dad wrote the biography and interviewed Uncle Tony for years and years, trying to figure. Didn't his brothers have something to do with helping him work on that combination?
What really happened was my dad was boxing in Boston, and Uncle Tony was there to watch. And my dad knocked the guy down 5 times in 3 rounds to what he thought was to win the Eastern championship. Well, they gave it to the hometown kid.
I remember that in the book.
Yep. And Uncle Tony just decided, I've got to find something that won't let that happen to me.
Yeah.
And he did. He designed that right to the body and left hook. He'd duck under that. left that you were throwing, put that right there, and that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Man, that
You can really
two-piece.
see it so well in that third Graziano fight. And it's on
Yeah.
YouTube. If you look up Zale
Oh,
Graziano.
oh,
you'll find it.
that's a popcorn and beer kind of joint right there. You know what I'm saying? Like, but
Yeah.
you get to see greatness, and greatness. Everybody wasn't born with Superman blood, but that's where you see that Superman blood. That's a different kind of human being. You know, cats are not all alike. You don't take a pussy cat in the same room with a lion. They're both cats. They're just levels. And
Mhm.
that's that kind of dude. So
Yeah.
yeah, that technique is very important. Thanks for that story there, Ted. I love a good I love, man, I can sit back, and that's why I have all those documentaries, because I just want to hear the story behind the man. And when you can appreciate that, then you're going to go further in boxing, period, because you understand the fiber of what everyone in this sport has to have a lion inside, and you must be willing to let it out. And sometimes you just have to find the things that will give you the key to let that out so you can use it and stuff. And he said, I do not want anything to go to the judges anymore. And he found something to let his lion out. And that's what he did. And that's what you all have to do. You all have to find that thing that unlock that thing that's inside of you that will get you to where you want to get to, and that promised land. So hopefully this was step one. I love doing the clinics with you guys, the virtual clinics. They're just so insightful, and it allows me to find out things that you're thinking about, which is what makes us operate even better. So thanks for taking the time to come and, invest in this. And Stacy will make sure you and Haley get into the School of Boxing portal online and
Love to
stuff.
do that.
And we'd love to have you up there and just check it out and stuff. And then give you an invite into the group so you guys can see these guys posting some really cool stuff. I mean, these guys work hard. They are working hard. They are in a place where boxing will be in a good place because they're learning. And we didn't have this. We didn't have this. Everything was on the job.
Yes.
Everything was on the job. You learn on the job. Figure it all out. Hopefully you got a professor in your corner. If not, you're just going to get smoked when you think and so, they don't have to do that now. There's technology, and there's people who are willing to give you the right content and do the stuff and help you.
You bet, Eric. You bet.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys for joining in. Thomas, you got to extend that to the Zale family, have them over there. Chris in your gym.
Yeah, please.
Absolutely.
I'd love that. That'd be cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you got to get that book too. Whenever your birthday is, I'll get it for you for your birthday. But we will come together, guys, and we will make this move to try to. I'll lead in the process of getting this this thing resolved with the Spinks family and boxing. So thanks, Haley. Any information that you guys can give me on what Uncle Tony was doing to get this thing moving would be totally a blessing to use, and it'll help me and point me in the right direction to start.
Yeah,
you got to get a couple of congressmen in your corner.
Yeah, I will. I know those politicians.
Yeah,
and I will.
It's all about.
Yeah, that's I guess that's why I've been positioned in this position. I guess that's why I'm comfortable doing it, because I don't mind doing that kind of thing. If it's going to change the complexity of the direction that we're going, I want our coaches to be better, but man, I want our sport to be better too. So I don't want these guys retiring and passing away, and their families are in distress. It's tough enough to know that your husband or wife is competing and, for their well-being, then to not be economically taken care of is tough. So we'll be on it, man. And thanks again, once again, guys. You guys